Starting off this terrifying list in at number 10 with bus 375. This is a scary Chinese urban legend about a bus in Beijing that disappeared during a cold November night. According to the legend, there was a driver, conductor, and 4 passengers riding on bus 375 at midnight. During the ride, the bus picked up 2 strange men who were holding a third man by his shoulders. They went to the back of the bus and they sat there in silence. One of the passengers was an elderly woman and she was highly disturbed by the 3 men. She felt as if something bad was going to happen. So after a few stops, 2 of the passengers got off the bus and then the elderly woman decided to cause a scene in order to get herself and the other passengers off of the bus. Once they were off of the bus, the old woman apologized to the other passengers and she said that she was positive that those 3 men on the bus were ghosts and that something horrible would happen to the bus. Sure enough, the next morning the bus was found submerged in water and the bodies of the driver, the conductor, and the unidentified men were found. Wow, talk about creepy. The banana tree ghost lurks into number 9. Legend has it that if you go into the forest at night, you might hear loud crying from the spirits of a haunted ghost. If you follow the sound, you'll come across a woman who sometimes is holding a baby. According to the legend, these banana tree ghosts will give you the winning lottery numbers in exchange for their freedom. In order to get the winning lottery numbers, you are supposed to tie a red string around the banana tree trunk, stab sharp nails to the string, and then tie the other end of rope to your bed. Well, there have been some greedy people who have done this, but they did not fulfill their promise to free the ghost. So in return, once they win the lottery, they suffer from a slow, agonizing, and painful death. Number 8 takes us to a single braid. There was a road called Single Braid Road that runs along the campus of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. It is called Single Braid Road after an urban legend that involves a female ghost with long braided hair walking alone at night. According to the legend, during one cold night, a girl with long braided hair snuck onto a train that was traveling from Hong Kong to the mainland. She was an illegal immigrant and she saw that police officers were asking people for their tickets and identification. So instead of getting caught and possibly arrested, she jumped off the moving train, but her braid got caught, so her hair, scalp, and skin were ripped off of her face. I mean, is this real life right now? Her boyfriend saw what happened and he didn't report it to the police and he never looked for her. So now on this road at nighttime, male students have claimed that they will see a woman who has no face lurking around the campus looking for her boyfriend to get her revenge. The Mongolian death worm wiggles in at number 7. This terrifying creature is believed to exist in the most desolated parts of the Gobi Desert. The Mongolian death worm is red in color, between 2 and 5 feet long, and they have a very thick body. According to the urban legends, the nightmarish creature travels underground and they create waves of sand on the surface. These creatures hunt livestock and humans. They are highly venomous and they're able to spray their venom at their prey or electrocute them. The Mongolians believe that if you touch any part of the worm, you will die from a very painful and fast death. Fox demons run into number 6. These demons appear to look like beautiful and seductive women who will try to seduce men. If these unsuspected men fall victim to the fox demon, then they will find themselves at the mercy of the demon, because in order to maintain their beautiful appearances, they have to consume human hearts or livers. The urban legend states that if you see villagers' corpses lying around with their hearts or livers dug out, there's a highly probability that a fox demon is lurking around and you need to be on the lookout, or you can find yourself becoming the next victim. Next up, in at number 5 is the Lotus Pond. This urban legend is centered around a young couple who were in love and they were planning on running away together to elope and get married. They made plans to meet at the Lotus Pond around midnight. However, when the girl showed up, she was waiting at the Lotus Pond for a long time. So when she went to look for her boyfriend, she saw him with another woman. She was so upset by this that she committed suicide by drowning in the pond. After she died, another young couple decided to meet by the Lotus Pond. The boy was early, and as he was waiting, he heard a female voice behind him say, "I asked you to meet me at midnight, didn't I?" The boy said, "No, you didn't," and all of a sudden, 2 pale ghostly hands emerged from the water and dragged him into the pond. He was drowned to death, and ever since then, there is an unwritten rule that if you go to the Lotus Pond during midnight and you see a girl, you should never answer her question or look at her. Otherwise, you'll find yourself in a lot of danger. The hanged ghost falls into number 4. These are the most common types of ghosts in Chinese folklore, and they are the angry spirits of people who have committed suicide or they were the victims of executions. They are believed to haunt the locations where they died, and according to the urban legends, they look like a corpse with a very long red tongue that hangs out of their mouth. They are also supposed to be highly convincing, and they will attempt to persuade you to join them in the afterlife by killing yourself. Hanged ghosts are said to be very powerful, so if you ever find a hanged ghost, you are most likely going to be their next victim. The ghost woman haunts her way into number 3. Legends has it that the New Gui, or ghost woman, was severely wronged in her life, and she is resurrected from the dead in order to seek revenge on the man who betrayed or harmed her. She will literally search for any and all men who have done women wrong, and she will suck the living essence out of her enemies. These ghosts are often women who have been murdered or abused by their husbands, and because of the pain they have endured, these ghosts will come back and brutally kill men and only scare women. The Shui Gui makes its way onto this list at number 2. If you guys have a fear of drowning, I would avoid, swimming in China, and this is because according to Chinese urban legends, the Shui Gui are very vengeful ghosts of people who have drowned. These water ghosts lurk in the same spot where they have unfortunately died in the water, and they wait patiently for a person to swim near them. Once they found their unsuspecting victim, the Shui Gui will drag them underwater, drown them, and the new person will become the new ghost, and the cycle will continue on forever. Oh, and apparently the Shui Gui will also take possession of the body and come back to life, while the victim's spirit will now try to take control of another living person's body. Finally, at the top of this frightening list, and at number 1, we have the Jiangshi, or otherwise known as the Chinese vampire. These haunted creatures are a mixture between a zombie and a vampire. Yeah, no thanks. Well, their corpse rise from the dead, and their sole purpose is to kill the living and to absorb their spirits. During the day, these creepy creatures remain in their coffins or they hide in dark caves, but during the night they walk like zombies and prey on innocent people. The Jiangshi have the power to breathe life into corpses, and they also have the ability to build a body with bones or rotten flesh. They apparently have red eyes, sharp claws, and greenish skin. Well, if I lived in China, I would be making myself a safe room to hide in during the nighttime, because it seems like nowhere is safe.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the virginal ghost. This is a term used to describe those grudge type apparitions that you've probably seen in horror movies, with the hair over the face, usually dressed in white. One day, a man who lived on the top floor of an apartment building woke up to the sound of a knock at his door. He lived alone and rarely got visitors. He walked to the door and asked, "Who's there?" After a few seconds, a voice said, "Count to 100 and don't make a sound or you'll die." He opened the door and there was nobody there. He was still quite scared though, and so he closed his eyes and started to count to 100 in his head. When he got to 49, he opened his eyes out of curiosity, and there she was, right in front of his face. Next up at number 9 now, we have plastic surgery. Now, plastic surgery is a big market in South Korea, and as such, horror stories have sprouted up around it. This story starts with a man sitting on an empty subway car when a tall, thin woman sits down in front of him. Her long, dark hair covers most of her face, but he can see she's wearing a surgical mask. As the doors close, he catches her eye. He smiles. She asks him, "Am I pretty?" He replies, "Yes," and then she starts to take the mask off. There's a huge wound from ear to ear, exposing her bleeding gums, teeth, and muscles. "Am I pretty now?" she screams at him. She takes out a scalpel and moves towards him. The doors open and he runs for his life. Next up at number 8 now, we have the organ thief. This is quite a modern South Korean urban legend coming from the city of Gwangju. Screenshots of a text conversation between two friends appeared on Facebook there and went viral. One of the friends was warning the other to not take taxis there at night. They said that one of their friends got in a taxi while drunk. The taxi driver then put a needle in their neck. They lost consciousness and were defenseless. When they came round, they were bleeding from their stomach and lying in a field on the outskirts of the city. He was rushed to hospital, where doctors found he was missing a kidney. The fear of these organ-stealing taxi drivers became so much that city officials said it was actually affecting the taxi business in the city. Alright, next up at number 7 now, we have Dalgyal Guishin. This is what's known as a traditional type of Korean ghost ghost dating back in legend hundreds and hundreds of years. It's notable because the ghost is said to appear with absolutely no facial features. No eyes, no nose or mouth. Some of them even lack arms and legs. They're often referred to as perhaps the most terrifying spirits in Korean folklore, as even just looking at one can cause instant death. Alright, next up at number 6 now, we have the back. The story goes that a married couple with a young son were always fighting every single day. After years and years of this, it got so bad that in a sheer rage, the father murdered the mother. He covered up the crime and nobody else suspected a thing. The only strange thing was the boy never seemed to complain about the absence of his mother, and so he asked him, "Son, why aren't you calling out for mommy? Most little boys would want their mummy to be with them. Tell me what bothers you." The little boy looked up and slowly replied, "I'm fine. I was just wondering why you're always carrying mommy on your back." This is one of many similar stories found across the land. Next up at number 5 now, we have sesame seeds. This is a strange urban legend that seems to scare people about coming into contact with sesame seeds. A girl had heard that taking a bath with sesame seeds in the water would be good for her skin, so that's exactly what she did. She sat in the bath for hours and hours. After a while, the girl's mother became concerned and went to check on her. When she opened the door, she found the girl was covered in the seeds which had sunk deep into her flesh. The daughter was crying and trying to remove them with a toothpick. There's one for any of you guys who hate the thought of holes in your skin. Alright, moving on to number 4 now, we have the bathroom girl. This one is kind of like Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter, but about 100 times more creepy. There are stories that in some of the old Korean schools with their dimly lit bathrooms live the ghosts of girls who have killed themselves. It's said that she now haunts the stall where the event took place. How do you know which stall it is? Well, the toilets have been said to flush by themselves, the doors slam with nobody around, and sometimes you can hear her cry or even catch a glimpse of her in the mirror. The most gruesome by far though is that sometimes she is said to emerge from the stall and ask you if you will use red or blue toilet paper. If you choose red, the ghost will then cut you open. If you choose blue, the ghost will suffocate you. I probably just wouldn't wipe. Next up at number 3 now, we have ghost money. In this urban legend, a member of the South Korean Mint went away on a business trip. During the trip, his daughter was abducted, murdered, and then dismembered. After a lengthy investigation, nobody was tried for the crime. It was believed that this lack of justice would turn the girl's ghost into an angry spirit that would seek revenge. Because of this, the Mint began to place images of her body parts and parts of her name on South Korean currency in the hopes that this would appease her. The Mint has denied all knowledge of this. At number 2 now, we have the loan shark. A loan shark is someone who lends people money, often illegally, at extremely high interest rates. Sometimes, if they don't get their money back, they take matters into their own hands. There's an urban legend from a small village in South Korea. Farmers there had to make a mass grave to bury cattle in who had died from disease. Not long after that, they heard a human voice calling out from beneath the soil. By the time they had dug through the dirt, the person buried among the cattle had already died. An investigation found that they owed a lot of money to a loan shark. This has apparently happened dozens of times across the country. And finally, number 1 now, we have oysters. This is a really weird urban legend coming from the South Korean coastline. Apparently, one day a guy was walking along the beach when he slipped and fell on a sharp rock that cut his knee open. He washed it quickly and put a bandage over it. When he got home, it started to itch, but he didn't want to remove the bandage in case it just made things worse. He took it off after a few days, and to his absolute horror, tiny oysters just covered the wound. It turns out there had actually been oyster eggs on the rock he had fallen on, which had gotten into his wound. They were protected by the bandage and fed on his blood until they had rooted themselves in his leg. Yeah. Starting off at number 10 now, we have Tek Tek. This is the urban legend about a girl who fell under a train and was cut in half. She then became a vengeful spirit that moves using her hands and elbows, dragging herself while making the sound Tek Tek. If you hear that noise, you're supposed to just run for your life. Those who are caught by the Tek Tek will receive a fate just like hers. She's said to slash her victims in half so that they look like her, and possibly also become wandering vengeful spirits just like she is. At number 9 now, we have the slit-mouthed woman. You may recognize this one from a number of Japanese movies and TV shows. The traditional name for this being is Kuchi Saki Onna and dates back over 300 years ago. She's a woman who was brutally murdered by her husband after he found out that she she was having an affair with another samurai. This left her in death as a restless, vengeful spirit. She is said to cover her mouth with a cloth mask, a fan, or a scarf. If you approach her, she'll ask you if you think she's pretty. If you answer yes, she will then remove the mask, and when the victim screams, they will be slashed from ear to ear until they look like her. Even if you say no to this question, she's said to just follow you home and then brutally murder you that night. Bit of a lose-lose situation. Next up at number 8 now, we have Daruma-san. This urban legend is more of an old game that's been passed down through the years. So here's how it goes. You shower in a bath, you turn off the lights, and you chant Daruma-san fell down while you wash your hair. It's said that you will then see a woman in your mind. She is Daruma-san. She'll be standing up in a bath. You will see her slip and fall onto an old rusty tap. It goes straight through her eye and kills her. Then you will feel her ghostly presence somewhere behind you. Now if you turn around, there she will be. Black, tangled hair, rotting clothes, one eye is bloodshot and the other is just a bloody, hollow eye socket. The game continues even further than that if you dare, but I think that's enough for you guys to understand just how creepy this urban legend is. Okay, at number 7 now, we have The Girl from the Gap. This Japanese story comes from people's natural fear of what lies lurking in the cracks of a home. Do you guys ever see something move past the hinge of a door when the door is open? Is that someone looking out from inside your wardrobe? Have you ever pictured a hand reaching out from between your bed and the floor? Well, it could be the girl from the gap, a spirit that lives both physically and metaphorically between worlds. It's said that if you ever see her, she will ask you if you want to play hide and seek. At that point, the game is on. When you see her between a gap again, she'll drag you to an otherworldly hell. At number 6 now, we have The Red Room. This is a very modern Japanese urban legend about a pop-up ad that's all red and black. When you see it in a child's voice, it will simply repeat the phrase, "Do you like?" Apparently a boy who got the pop-up tried to close it, but it just kept reappearing. Then it changed to, "Do you like red?" He keeps trying to close it, but it grows larger and changes again to say, "Do you like the red room?" Then the site changes entirely. It's just completely red and black. It has a list of names on it. His friend's name is at the bottom. A hand reaches out towards the boy's neck from a video. The ending gets even more twisted, but guess what? It's based on a real website. It's still out there. If you can find it, you'll know the gruesome legend of the Red Room, and if the horrible ending comes true for you. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the Human Pillars. This legend dates back to ancient times in Japan, where it's known as Hito Bashira. Back then, there was a belief that a human sacrifice sealed inside a structure would make the foundation more stable. This means that many old Japanese buildings are said to contain the spirits of the people who were sacrificed during their construction. One famous example is Matsu Castle, where a woman was sealed inside the foundations during its construction. Now her spirit is said to haunt the castle, and whenever a woman dances there, the castle shakes violently. Many building owners in Japan are actually quite open about their buildings being a human pillar. Next up at number 4 now, we have the Snake Woman. This one comes from the old Japanese folklore of Nuri Onna, which translates to wet woman. She's often described as having the head of a woman and the body of a snake, with long claws, snake eyes, and jet black hair. She carries with her a childlike bundle to lure in her victims. If a person then tries to pick up the baby to help, they find it's not actually a child at all. The bundle then becomes very heavy and stops the victim from fleeing. The Snake Woman then uses her long tongue to suck all of the blood from the victim's body until they die. Next up at number 3 now, we have Oni Baba. She is a demon woman that often appears in Japanese folklore. She will often appear as an old woman asking for help, but if you get too close, she will slice you open with a knife and eat you. She's said to be the tormented spirit of a woman who accidentally killed her own pregnant daughter and unborn grandchild in an effort to find a cure for her friend's child being sick. She was told to bring back the liver of an unborn child, but when she finally killed her victims, she found they were actually her own family. Okay, next up at number 2 now, we have The Dream School. This one is extra creepy because apparently if you don't forget this story within a week of hearing it, it will happen to you. Let's see if that's true. One night, a boy had a dream about a school. The hallways just looped forever, bringing him always back to the start. Staircases led back to the first floor. As he got quite scared, he heard footsteps behind him. He ran until he found an emergency exit with a glass box and a key next to it. The glass had been smashed and there was no key, just a note saying that it could be found in room 108. When he found that room, it was empty. No students, but there were backpacks hanging off every single chair. Then there was a pounding on the door. He opened it, terrified, to find the hallways covered with dead children. It's said that he never woke up from his dream, and if you don't forget this story in 1 week, you will meet the same fate. Don't worry though guys, I don't think this is true, although if you don't see me on the channel next week, sorry. And finally at number 1 now we have Onryo. This is a traditional Japanese belief about a vengeful spirit that can and will physically hurt the living. It's a very scary concept if you're only familiar with the Western idea of ghosts, which don't really tend to take solid forms and so can't hurt humans with physical contact in the traditional way. That's not true though for an Onryo. They are vengeful and full of hate, stopping at nothing to enact the suffering they received when they were alive. For any of you guys who have seen The Grudge, this spirit is the influence for that creepy girl in that movie.